Ladies and gentlemen, comrades in struggle, the message that I would like to pass on to you today is simple. Do not be afraid. The current authorities of the country are committed to assert the sovereignty of Burkina Faso and putting the country back on track of development. This necessarily led to heartbreak and upheavals. Many took pleasure in the situation of dependence of Burkina Faso because they benefited from the secondary benefits of this dependence. The policies of refoundation and sovereignty which are currently being carried out calls into question the interests of local valleys on which the Western imperialists rely on to keep our countries dependent. The refoundation and development of Burkina Faso calls into question the interest of those who are in behavioral and intellectual mimicry. Also call into question the interests of certain economic operators which rely on this mimicry to sell consumer products by playing the role of a simple apprentice of capitalism and Western imperialism. They still call into question the interests of the so-called scholars who maliciously use pseudo-progressive language to surprise the attention of the populations and better amuse them. Rigorous management of state assets in the fight against corruption also create a lot of dissatisfaction. All of these people are currently up against the current regime and the refoundation regime, whose only crime is to call into question what they consider to be perpetual assets for their benefit. Their objective is therefore to bring down the regime by all means, including the most immoral, with the support of their Western masters and their African sub-chiefs from the sub-region besides Burkina. We find these people mainly in France, in the United States, and closer to us, in the Ivory Coast. But I tell you, do not be afraid. What you perhaps don't know is that from the first hours of this regime, most of them offered their services in vain to current authorities. Knowing their duplicity, no follow-up was given to them. Some waited in vain to be approached. So it's out of spite, out of the spirit of revenge, and to satisfy their ambitions that they threw all their strength into the fight against the regime. They have no project to propose, besides that of putting Burkina back in the chains of servitude and colluding again in complete freedom with the terrorists at the price of the blood of the Burkinabè. Do not be afraid, because the team in power, for nothing in the world, will never again give up the country into the hands of political entrepreneurs, opportunists, and adventurers. Do not be afraid because of your leaders, nor your enemies. Those who are ready to mortgage the country, if necessary, for their little unbridled ambitions. Those who only think of themselves and who have no tears of compassion for the millions of poor Burkinabè in the cities and countryside. Those who are ready to set fire on Burkina just to warm up their coffee. Supporters of the current regime are worried that the enemies of the people have free rein to distill their venom. Do not be afraid. for the agitations are in vain and have no effect on the march of the people. Do not be afraid, because now it is the people themselves who are leading their struggle for the rebuilding of sovereignty and development. And in this struggle, Burkina is not alone. It is leading together with the countries of the Alliance of the Sahel States. And this is something new under the African sky. You are often told to take care of yourself, not to get too involved because the regime could fall at any moment. Do not be afraid, because this is the regime of the people, supported by the peoples of the nation, cannot fall. Commit yourself to giving meaning to your life for a useful and non-vegetative life. To live 100 years in the shoes of cowards is living without existing. Do not be afraid. The fear of living leads to lifelessness. Live fully by taking charge of your life to be yourself. Do not be afraid, but be vigilant. Be careful, because we are living in a time of political unrest. It is true that the common people of the countryside and the towns, the farmers, the breeders, actors of the informal sector, artisans, and small traders are beginning to acquire a political conscience. It is as true as those who always dominated and exploited them have not given up. They do not accept the irruption onto the political scene of the people, of the common people whom they despise, so they never stop with maneuvers and intrigues to raise doubts and demobilize the common people. This is why we must remain vigilant, to foil the subtle traps set by those who are not ready to make any sacrifice for the emancipation of their brothers. One of the best tricks is to pompously proclaim oneself revolutionary, progressive, or left-wing, and to use language supposedly for workers, to pretend to be the defender of workers and purchasing power. Make no mistake, for them, the worker is the one who lounges in a ventilated or air-conditioned office, that is to say, the few thousand employees, especially from the cities, mainly from Ouagadougou and Bobo Dioulasso. For them, too bad for the millions of farmers, breeders, artisans, and small traders whose fate matters little to them. They always fight for more of an increase in their salaries, their compensation, their personal benefits. Whether the millions of other Burkinabès die or not, it is not their concern. This is the reality of those who cloak themselves in the mantle of progressives or defenders of workers to better abuse the people. Some of them even refused a merely symbolic contribution, 1% of their salary, to participate in the defense of the homeland in danger, which is more than revealing. This is why we must remain vigilant so as not to be misled by those who, in order to achieve their goal, are ready for all possible mutations and contortions, provided that their self-esteem is preserved and that their own interests are guaranteed. Be vigilant, but do not be afraid, because with President Traore, Burkina is in good hands. Victory to the committed people. Thank you.